Thank you, Senator. Appreciate this opportunity to present our budget request for the State Board of Architecture. I'm John Cothran. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Architecture. Joining me today is Andrew Kilpatrick. He's the board's private legal counsel. Alan Hoops, who is chair of the Landscape Architecture Advisory Committee, which is advisory to the Board of Architecture, and Richard McNeil, who is the current Secretary Treasurer of the Board of Architecture. So again, appreciate this opportunity. In your packages, I provided, you do have two handouts. The left-hand pocket is a more extensive handout that gives you more detail about our program, goals, et cetera. And then in the right-hand pocket, you have a short one-page front and back executive summary for your convenience. So during the presentation, I'll be referring to the shorter executive summary. But again, if you want more detail about our board, you can always go to the longer handout that's been provided. So in brief, who we are, the mission of the State Board of Architecture is to serve the state of Mississippi by protecting and preserving the life, health, and property of the Mississippians and others who live, work, and play in the built environment through the regulations of the professions of architecture, landscape architecture, and certified interior design. The board was created in 1928, so we're coming up on our 100th anniversary. The landscape architects were added as an advisory committee in 1973, and certified interior designers were added in 2011. So we are a consolidated agency. We have three professions in one agency for optimal efficiency versus having three separate agencies. We do have 15 board and committee members total, 5 on the board and 5 on each of the committees. The board meets quarterly, and we have special meetings as needed, and the committees typically meet 2 to 4 times per year. And this is a very active board. Our members are very involved, as evidenced by a couple of them attending the hearing today. So just wanted to point that out. License statistics, we average around 2,000 licensees. We've maintained that average for the last probably 15 or 20 years. Our total as of December 31st was 1,952. The majority of those are architects, and 24% are residents of Mississippi. So the vast majority of our licensees are out of state. So that's the bulk of our revenues from out of state licensees. The board is very focused on removing barriers for business through reasonable regulation. Rule changes for architects recently took effect that allow a non-resident architect who is not licensed in Mississippi to serve as a consultant to a Mississippi registered architect if the Mississippi architect serves as the architect of record in responsible control. And this allows resident architects to more easily avail themselves of expertise that may be available out of state. The responsible control requirements were also amended to allow architects to use third-party off-site drafting services if certain criteria are met to ensure that the architect remains in responsible control. The board reviews its rules and regulations each year to ensure relevancy and eliminate any redundancies and impediments. The landscape architecture rules were also recently reviewed, and those were amended last year as well. The board is also pursuing legislation to allow landscape architects to have ownership interest in a firm offering architectural services, and to remove restrictions on practice through business corporations and LLCs. For architects, while preserving personal liability for any negligent or wrongful acts or omissions. This has been introduced as House Bill 346 by Representative Creekmore, and these changes will bring Mississippi into alignment with most of the country and remove unnecessary barriers to multidisciplinary practice. We also pride ourselves on providing exceptional customer service. If somebody calls our office, a real person answers the phone with knowledge of the regulated professions, and we typically respond to all emails within 1 business day. And this level of service is difficult to achieve in large umbrella agencies in which employees may field questions regarding multiple unrelated professions and occupations. Also, we have very effective license mobility, thanks largely to the efforts of the national organizations for the design professions in which the board is involved. The requirements for licensure are mostly uniform from state to state, which facilitates reciprocity. Over 90% of new licenses are issued by reciprocity, which demonstrates the effectiveness of this process. And the board is continually exploring ways to facilitate interstate practice while maintaining focus on protection of life, health, and property. At the bottom of the first page of the executive summary is some of our key performance measures. We have a 99% customer satisfaction rating for fiscal year 25. That's based on a survey of all of our licensees. 100% of all renewals and applications were processed online. 98% of completed applications were processed within 3 weeks, which is our agency objective. Also, 100% of administrative and accounting functions are performed by staff rather than private vendors. Our typical turnaround time for completed applications was 3 business days, and complaints were resolved in an average of 111 business days. Our objective is 180 days, and we have no backlog of complaints. On the reverse side of the summary, at the top of the page is a chart showing our expenses over a 5-year period. We do keep budget increases to a minimum, and our budget request for fiscal year 2027 is only slightly higher than the fiscal year 26 amount. We have not increased our fees since 2015, and some fees have been eliminated since that time. Also, we do not charge what we call nuisance fees for license verifications, letters of good standing, address changes, etc. We do have a 2-year revenue cycle because our registrants renew every 2 years, every other year in even numbered fiscal years. So most of our revenue is obtained in those even numbered fiscal years, as you'll see on the chart that's labeled revenue versus expenses. So the revenue that we derive from those renewals basically carries us through 2 years. And we're funded, of course, entirely through license fees and fines with no funds from the general fund. And these revenues help us to achieve our agency goals, which are professional licensing and certification. We efficiently issue licenses and certificates to qualified individuals. Secondly, regulation and enforcement. We strive to ensure that registered design professionals protect the public's life, health, and property. And third, communications, outreach, and organizational effectiveness. We proactively educate students, interns, registrants, building officials, and others, and provide exceptional customer service while remaining fiscally responsible. And a summary of our fiscal year 27 budget request is at the bottom of the reverse side of our executive summary. We have requested $368,123 for fiscal year 2027. Changes from fiscal year 26 are very minimal, which results in a slight increase of expenditures of around 1%. An increase in personal services is requested to allow for a 5% salary increase for board staff to bring the salaries to a level commensurate with salaries for other comparable positions in surrounding states and closer to the current market rate. The increase is also requested due to increases in rent, interagency, and IT costs, as well as insurance fees. And a portion of this increase is offset by slight decreases in travel and some contractual expenses. This request will allow the continuation of the current slate of services to achieve our agency goals. And although the Joint Legislative Budget Committee has recommended a decrease in our appropriation, we would respectfully request full funding in view of a need of which we just learned to modernize our licensing system, which is going to result in higher than anticipated expenditures in fiscal year 27. We're estimating that likely will cost a minimum of around $25,000 to upgrade our license system. So in view of that fact, we certainly would not request any reduction, or potentially we might need an increase in the amount requested, but we're still gathering proposals for that license system upgrade. So that concludes the presentation. We'll be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Thanks very much. Do we have any questions from anyone? Sure.
Last 14 days. Oh, shoot. Sorry. There we go. I'm Richard McNeil. I'm licensed in 14 states, so I get the opportunity to see how other states run their licensing operations as compared to our state. And I'm biased, been on the board a while, but I really appreciate with two full-time employees, how well they work hard and respond. I don't get that from some other states. And I won't bore you with the details of that, but I just wanted you to know, I think our guys are doing a real good job and I appreciate y'all's support.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for coming, and if you have any question, beyond this, any comments, just give me a call.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
But my name is Cherie Brewer. Excuse me. My name is Cherie Brewer. I'm the Executive Director of the State Board of Public Accountancy. You can't hear me? Okay. Directly into it. How about that? Okay. Again, my name is Cherie Brewer. I'm the Executive Director with the State Board of Public Accountancy. We are the licensing and regulatory board for CPAs and CPA firms in the state. We also handle getting candidates through the CPA exam process. Here we have currently about 3,600 active individual licensed CPAs in Mississippi and about 800 CPA firms. We have had a loss of about 10% of the individual CPA population over the last decade. So we have seen some loss in the number of people who are licensed with us, but not too bad. That we have. Making a request for any additional funding this year except for compensation for the staff. I am requesting a 3% budget line item in the compensation area for that, but nothing in any of our other areas. We do have one special request that is included in this document that we've provided to you. We have begun some succession planning. I will be 61 this year and I'm looking to retire at 65. So we are setting up plans to have our audit supervisor take the CPA exam so that she would be able to move to the executive director position, and having a CPA license is a requirement of the board to be the executive director. We do not need additional budget money to make the initial outlay for a Becker review course for her, but we would like permission to allow her to pay that back over a 12 months on a payroll deduction. This is a policy that's in place that the state auditor's office uses, and that they have this some additional language included in their appropriation bill. And so I have included the language on that narrative there, if you would consider that for us. Additionally, I would like to tell you about a waiver program that our board voted and approved in September that begins January the 1st, where we are waiving application fees for our candidates to sit for this CPA exam and any retakes that they take of different parts of the CPA exam. They have made a decision to examine a revenue reduction every December. And as long as our cash balance holds out, they want to continue to waive the fees that are charged to our candidates to sit for the CPA exam and the various parts of the CPA exam. And if it continues to hold out, they have considered looking into reducing the renewal fee for individual CPAs. But no, that's not on the table yet. This first year was to look at waiving the application fees for sitting for the CPA exam. They had been examining for the last couple of years, working on some kind of a scholarship program for candidates. And so this is what they have settled on, was to waive the application fees. The actual costs of the exam are not something that the board has access to. They pay the board, but the board holds it and is billed by NASBA, AICPA, and Prometric. So those are, we don't actually keep those monies for the actual test parts. What we get revenue on is the application fees that are charged to the candidates as they're applying to sit for the exam or sit for retakes of the exam. So that is something the board has approved in September. It began January 1st. I did take a quick look as what we had obtained through the first 2 weeks of January, and we had 42 candidates that had been able to take advantage of the waiver of that. And our application fees are $150 to take the initial part of the CPA exam, and then $75 generally for any retakes that they take on anything. So we had at December 31st, we had a cash balance that allowed us of about 17 months worth of expenses. And so the board feels that they are in good shape to allow for this waiver for some time to reduce our cash balance. Don't know if you have any particular questions for me, but I'll certainly be glad to answer them.
Would you repeat the number that had taken advantage of the?
For the first 2 weeks, that's all I've got. First 2 weeks, I had 42 candidates. And again, the board will be examining this every December was the program that they've got. They will examine every December and decide how much longer for the next calendar year to continue it. And it is on the list to look at waiving it for the renewal fees once they're licensed. So this is going to be, there's not only just application fees for taking the exam, it will also include the initial application for licensure as well. Is also being waived for this first year.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's see more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got one question. Being that y'all receive the funds to certify these accountants, whatever state they are, do y'all provide any assistance to them when, after doing their due diligence with their work, and they run into a problem with the state or the federal tax, basically the IRS? Y'all have any assistance when they run in?
No, sir. No,
They're
sir.
on their own?
No, we don't assist that. We are involved in investigations. If we were to receive a complaint that we had a CPA or a CPA firm that was alleged a complaint, and that could be from the public. It could be something that we internally generate with our processes that we look into for quality control and that sort of thing. If we have received complaints from other boards, the SEC, the PCAOB, if we received a complaint from the IRS about one of our CPAs, we would investigate that as well. But as far as providing support to a CPA for if they were having an issue with the IRS, no, so we don't do that.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear what you're saying, but anyhow, we can talk later if I can get some information from y'all, and I'll follow up with this later. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Okay. No questions, thank you. Again. Okay. What?
Does this one work a little better? Okay, if I understood your question, you were asking, do we provide any support for a CPA if they found themselves in a position where they've gotten crossways with the IRS? Is that what you're?
Guidance to how they need to proceed with the IRS or the state.
No, I would honestly, I would not consider that our lane. As far as trying to help a CPA, if he has represented a client, in a manner that gets the client brought before the IRS, that's going to be for the CPA to handle that. He would be handling that before the IRS. If he has if you've had a client who has been brought before the IRS, the CPA would represent the client before the IRS. We're not in a position where we're going to go and lobby for or against a CPA to the IRS. Not for the CPA, no. Now, if we received a complaint from the IRS about something that they had determined was a problem with a particular CPA, then we would investigate that.
This is in the process. It's not really dealing with a client. I guess what you say, that the technical transfer of papers through the communications of the internet through their computer system. And the file up is with the IRS. It's nothing to do with the CPA themselves or their client, but the avenues of trying to expedite getting things cleared up with a state or a federal agency. Y'all don't provide no guidance on how to do that.
No, we, unless you were in a situation where, something was subject to a rule violation and the CPA contacted us and asked for, some clarification on our rules or statutes as it might affect something that they're dealing with before the IRS. Now that I can help with. But as far as going to the IRS to help represent or help clear up something for a CPA and how they practiced, no, sir, I would think that would be up to the CPA and perhaps his insurance carrier would be my guess on that.
Okay. Thank
You ready for me to get? Sorry. This one? Sure. We're running just a minute ahead, so I'm scattered. If you give me half a second, I'll have to put that together. Ready?
For coming.
Thank you. Most of you know I'm Denise DeRossett. I work with Cornerstone Consulting Group, and we represent several agencies doing their financial, budgeting, and human resource services, among other things. And as I said, Yvonne Laird is out sick and could not get here, and so she asked if I would represent her today. I will tell you that I know more about the accounting side than I do about the licensing side because that's her forte. We do have a little bit of information that I can provide to you. And I did not highlight my notes because I didn't know I would be doing this, but that's okay. Just wanted you to know that there's a couple of things that she wanted us to point out on the budget and then also about the agency operations. This agency represents and licenses massage therapists, and you may know that massage therapists do not always just work in one entity. They can be in chiropractors' offices, they can be in doctors' offices, they can be in massage parlors, they can be in lots of different places. And so they register across lots of entities. The other thing is they used to never license or permit facilities, but that was changed by the legislature several years ago because of an issue that was expressed, especially by law enforcement, because they wanted to be able to go into a facility that they thought might have some sex trafficking going on. And so when they started licensing and permitting facilities, that totally changed the structure of the agency, added a lot more regulatory requirements there. And so they have 468 active licenses now. And so that regulatory agency responsibilities has taken more of their time. They actually, I mentioned that Yvonne Laird is the management consultant. In the agencies that Yvonne actually handles, she does all of the legwork for the agency. They have no staff. They have no state-owned space. Everything is handled through the management company. And so Yvonne has an actual staff that does her licensing. As I mentioned, one of her staff was supposed to be here today, but she's actually doing the fingerprinting. They do the evaluations. They give all of the office space. They take care of all of the agency operations. And there's a few things that are done outside of the management company. They contract for inspections. The inspections that need to be done are done at $44 a site plus travel. The fiscal services are performed by Cornerstone. Information technology is performed by an outside vendor. They use fingerprinting and court reporting as needed whenever there's a hearing. And the legal representation is provided by the Attorney General. They also have a third party who does an independent review of the bank account. So very, very good operations, some of the best I see across the board, very efficient. The revenue in this agency has historically been much higher than the expenses. And the cash balance right now at the end of December was almost $400,000. For the past 5 years, the agency has expanded their registration of the massage businesses, as I mentioned. But the budget needs of the agency have been very consistent. Even though the revenue has increased, they haven't really asked for much in the last several years. In FY23, they did come before you and ask for an increase. It was a slight increase only because DFA had increased their fees, and that was the only increase they asked for. And then in FY26, they did ask for an increase in the management fee. To offset that request to increase the management fee, they reduced their technology fees and their equipment cost so that they could more than cover what they needed to do. They began an in-depth review of their operations and started looking at what it would be if they did not do this all with a management company. And they realized that if they'd hired an executive director and an office staff to do the work, just those two salaries alone would be $155,000. Plus, they'd have to have office space and a lot of other expenses. And so the board decided that they were getting off, they were kind of taking advantage of the J-Bar and Yvonne, and so they wanted to raise the rates that they're paying her. And so they're asking for to increase her contract and increase the budget to cover what she's doing. To meet the obligations that they would like, they want to increase their contractual budget by $17,028. And they're asking for that to be added to the contractual service above the LBR. And as I mentioned, the board reduced its equipment budget in FY26, and they're asking to have that reinstated for FY27 so that they can go ahead and buy some computers that they did not buy in the current year or the last couple of years. And they would like to buy 2 new computers with monitors and all of the setup for all of that. So the total increase over the LBR would be $20,028. There is a sheet that provides some of the statistical data of how many cases that they have, how many applications they have. So the total licenses issued by this board is 3,124. And they've taken action on one of the cases of 56 that came before them. And I guess that's really a brief synopsis. If y'all have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you. Have any questions? All right. Thank you for coming.
Okay. Are you ready for me to start again?
Yes.
Once again, the executive director sent me a note and said that she could not come today. Not exactly sure if it's a health issue or what. She just said, please represent us at the Senate and apologize that she could not be here. Sometimes when these things happen, it's really hard to get a board member here as well, because they come from all over the state and at the last minute cannot make plans to attend. So again, I'm presenting on their behalf. The Board of Licensed Professional Counselors regulates anybody who professes to be a licensed counselor. And it's psychotherapy who offers professional counseling, or any kind of psychotherapy services. They are overseen by a 5-member board. The board is nominated by the Mississippi Counseling Association and is appointed by the governor. Currently, there are no vacancies on the board, and this board, every member is serving in a concurrent term, which we don't always see in all the boards. So the board is required by statute to hold 2 meetings every year, but additionally, they meet often. And I think last year they met about 14 times. Actually 19 times, I apologize. During those meetings, they go over their rules and regulations. They review all of the license applications. They review the complaints. They hold the hearings, and they look at continuing education for licensees. There are 2 staff members of the agency, and I will tell you, this board is, as I mentioned, is very active. They do not have an investigator, and so much of the complaints are handled actually by board members. These board members do not serve with a per diem. So they are exempt from the per diem. So they're serving just with travel. What the board is asking, I can tell you they have 2 staff members. They're asking to have a full-time investigator added to their head count. One of the reasons they want to do that is they're using part-time investigators and contractual services to take care of some of the investigative cost. And they're also having to use board members. And if the board member has to do the investigation, then they have to recuse themselves from the hearing itself. So having a full-time staff member is their biggest ask in this area. To do that, they would need an additional almost $52,000. And I want to point out that a year ago, the state auditor's office did a review of some of the regulatory agencies, and they looked at specific issues. And one of the issues they looked at was the complaint process and how much the complaints are behind or lagging. They recommended a couple of things. And so this board actually was included in that, the need to have their investigations handled more timely, and which is one of the reasons that they would like to do that. There is, like I said, a full-time executive director, and in 2022, the legislature gave them an extra headcount to handle administrative functions. But as licensing functions have increased, the person that was doing the administrative work is now handling much more of the licensure. And so that what they would like to do, they don't want to add a headcount for those administrative services, but they would like an extra $35,000 in the contractual line item to hire temporary staff to come in on a contractual basis and handle some of the administrative functions that were being performed by now the person doing the licensing. They think that would be more cost effective to have it in a contractual basis than trying to hire a staff person where they would have to pay all of the fringe benefits. So that's what they would like, is to have one new staff person and then contractual services to handle the administrative offices. And then the final request that they ask in the salary line item is they would like $10,000 for salary progressions. They're outside the purview of the State Personnel Board, so they do not have to have a salary target inside of their appropriation, but they would like the funding for that. In FY25 and FY26, the appropriation included a lot of extra money for them because they did not have a licensing system that was sustainable. And so they went out and have now implemented a new licensing system, and it should be completed in this current year. However, things have changed since it was implemented and designed. And so they now want to have some money to modify it to include the counseling compact, because that was not part of the original design. And they also want to have some search capabilities with the bot. And so that would take an extra $35,295. That would be a one-time increase in the budget for the technology services. The last thing I want to point out has to do with their revenue and their cash. In FY 25, the agency's expenses were higher than they have been in a normal year because of that contractual expense to put in the app into the new licensing system. But in that same year, revenue increased by over 11%. So there is a chart of the revenue in the last 6 years on the last page of your handout that shows that the revenue has increased by almost 35% in this 5-year period, but the expenses have not. So on average, there's $85,000 more in revenue than there is in expenses. And so they have a large cash balance that would take them through. And again, there's a chart that shows you the revenue to expense. So that is what they're requesting. And I do have information on the number of licenses and if you all would like any of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think at the very end, you were saying they have a large cash balance, like I said, 11% increase, roughly about 80,000. Would that not cover the 70,000 in contractual that you needed covered, or
Right, we just need the spending
you
authority.
just need spending authority?
That's right.
Okay.
We don't need any cash at all.
Okay, thanks,
Mhm.
Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McCon.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. So what is your cash balance right now?
It is. Got it right here. It's 860,000.
We're holding over $800,000 in a cash balance. Are we doing anything towards licenses? I mean, are we giving them any breaks or anything? Because in the past, we've come to boards that are holding huge cash balances and are continuing to make money and asking them to begin doing a few things to give back to their members because they're self-funded from their members, and we don't think that you should just be holding money.
Agreed. And this board will be looking into that as well. Part of the reason there is a cash balance has a lot to do with out-of-state licenses. You have to hold a license in Mississippi. And so during the COVID period, we found a lot of out-of-state licenses, people wanting to practice in Mississippi because they were able to do counseling online. And so our revenues were probably increased because of the telemedicine.
Okay. Two other questions I've got. Where are y'all located? Are y'all located in a state office building or do you have your own lease somewhere?
They're located in the Robert E. Lee.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? No questions. We thank you for coming.
I made a note for the board. I made a note of what you asked to make sure the board understood that.
We're ready?
Ready?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And I'm here on behalf of the Mississippi State Board of Contractors. My name is Stephanie Lee. I am the Executive Director. I know many of you. Is that better? Okay. I'll try to keep it close. Let me know if I fade away. As I said, I'm Stephanie Lee, Executive Director of the Mississippi State Board of Contractors. I know many of you are familiar with the board, but I'll give you just a little bit of background. The agency is the state administrative agency that licenses and regulates construction contractors throughout Mississippi. Our mission is simple. It's to protect the public and by ensuring contractors are properly licensed, qualified, and accountable. There are over 13,000 licensed contractors currently in the state of Mississippi. This includes both residential contractors, commercial contractors, electricians, plumbers, water sewer contractors, road and bridge contractors, and then every discipline in between. We process applications on a daily basis and issue license weekly. In addition to our daily actions of reviewing applications and issuing license, we also actively assist consumers, especially during severe weather events like we're expecting this weekend and post-disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes, by helping ensure that consumers are protected, that they're aware of some of the common scams that are perpetrated by fraudulent contractors that come in post-disaster, and then also helping ensure that contractors that are coming into the state are compliant with the state licensing laws. We work closely with other states to reduce licensing barriers for contractors, including participation in exam waiver and reciprocity agreements. Currently, we have 15 exam waiver or reciprocity agreements with other states. Just last week, our board approved an additional agreement, bringing that total number to 16. This helps streamline compliance and expands workforce mobility and helps benefit contractors and consumers in the participating states alike. One of the things that's unique to our board is we utilize a portion of all licensing fees that are collected to invest right back into the construction industry through workforce development and construction education and craft training. I'll go into that a little bit further in just a moment. All of our operations are funded by fees associated with licensure and compliance. So we're not requesting any general fund appropriations. We're just requesting spending authority to utilize the funds that we already collect related to licensure. Any questions about any of those operations or activities that we do? If not, I'll just get into our request for this year. Our total budget request is 4.7 million. That's just a fraction of the overall state budget. It is higher than we've requested in the past. We are requesting targeted increases in 4 areas. The first one is in services. That comprises the biggest increase in our request this year. That is because we are looking at making a one-time investment into a new licensing database. If you look at that second page on the handout that I gave you, it goes into a little more detail regarding the cost benefit analysis that we've looked at regarding this one-time investment. Over the last 5 years, we've processed 61,000 licensing transactions. A lot of those involve a manual labor component, paper process, postage, and all the expenses that go along with that. We're working to streamline and make those processes much more efficient. For instance, all of our complaints, or the majority of our complaints, like 90%, are now processed online. Our renewals are processed online, and we're looking to transition and making all of our other processes digital and offered in an electronic format. In order to accommodate that, we need to invest in a new licensing database. The current one that we have is nearly 20 years old, so it is past its lifetime. As you see there on that page, we expect to recoup this one-time investment in as little as 2 years, just by decreasing the amount of postage and paperwork and then manual processes that would be involved with that. The second category is in grants. As I stated earlier, a portion of all of our licensure fees are collected and reinvested back into the construction industry through workforce development, construction, education, and craft training. This is a statutory obligation. Over the last several years, our licensing numbers have increased nearly 40%. And so we are just looking at increasing our spending authority to keep up with that statutory obligation. So we're requesting to increase that grant category a 4.35% increase. The next category is salaries. As I said, applications and renewals have increased significantly from 20 to 25, nearly 40%. Obviously, that resulted in an increased workload for staff. Unfortunately, salary progressions have not kept up with that increased workload. So we are requesting an increase in salaries to be able to grant those salary progressions for that longtime staff. Traditionally, our agency has had low employee turnover. And so in order to compensate for that increased workload, the amount of experience and being able to retain that staff and to continue providing services, we're requesting an increase in the salary category. And then finally, we're just requesting a modest 5% increase in the travel category. That is just to reflect the rising fuel cost and federal mileage reimbursement rate. Other than that, the rest of our request is similar to what has been granted in years past, other than those 4 categories. And then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about any of those requests.
Any questions? Mr. McCon?
All right, just kind of on the general, same path we've been talking on, what's your current fund balance for the agency?
The current cash balance?
Cash balance?
Yes, sir. Current cash balance is 3.3 million in our operating category. That's what's utilized for our day-to-day operations. It's 1.7 that's in that, it's in the special fund that was created by statute that has to go to construction, education, and craft training. So that was at the end of the second quarter, so effective December 31st. We just last week at our January board meeting, assembled all of the applications for those high schools, community colleges, universities that apply for that grant funding. And so those disbursements will be made at our April board meeting. So that would decrease that grant funding category, that 1.7 million. And then what we collect between now and when that's dispersed will go towards that funding for that statutory obligation to give back to those construction education programs.
Yeah, I'm not really worried about your grants and your education programs. I'm more concerned about your operating capital of about 3.3 or I think we had saw some numbers on transparency of about 3.7 sitting out there. So what are you expecting to have as a surplus when you finish the fiscal year?
Well, the agency has historically operated, been financially responsible. Like I said, that balance I pulled as of December 31st. January is historically a high renewal month. So it probably is higher based on the funds that the amount that you're looking at. And we do expect to have the funds to support what we've requested in this year's budget request.
I have no doubt you're gonna be able to support what you've requested. My concern is the number of agencies that we're holding excessive amounts of money that belong back to their members. And I agree that you need a pad out there, but I also don't think that we should be continuing to just add and add and add when we could do more for the members. So that's our concern on that. And that's the reason I ask these questions. If you're gonna end the year with $2 million in your account, then why are we holding $2 million? Because we've got members out there. Maybe there's other things you can do. We've had to have other agencies in here and have a discussion about that because the amounts got so excessive that there was no reason to be holding those funds. When you had members out there paying, their continuing education fees, they had to paying their licensure application fees, all those things. So anyway, I do want you to have a cushion, but also don't think you should be excessive with the amounts you're holding. That's the only thing I'm saying.
I agree. And historically, we have not had a large cushion other than what would be utilized for operating cost the following fiscal year.
Next question I've got for you is, do y'all have your own office, correct? An
We-
office building?
We lease.
You lease from an office building? Okay. And you're asking for how much of an increase for your executive director? 4.5%?
I'm sorry, the increase.
So your executive director, you're asking for what, 4.5% increase?
Not for the executive director, for the employee's salary progression. Executive director is limited by state personnel board, and that cannot be increased without approval first from state personnel board. And that has not been approved.
Very good. Thank you.
Your grant, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your grant program, how many high schools are participating in it now?
So the high schools, there's over 6,000 students that benefit from that program, and high schools that have CTE programs, VOTEC programs is what we called it back in my day. And then there's multiple community colleges as well as universities that have construction education and craft training programs. Also, we work, those funds are collected by our agency, and then they're redistributed to the high schools and community colleges and universities, as well as the Construction Education Foundation that was established pursuant to the statute. That's now known as Build Mississippi. Build Mississippi works closely with the high schools throughout the state to assist those students, as well as the Department of Corrections. They have a workforce training program now that has been very successful in reducing recidivism rate. And actually the preliminary feedback that we're getting since that program started a couple of years ago with the Department of Corrections is that employers are preferring those, to hire those inmates as they're released, because they've been very successful. They show up for work. They have an incentive to show up for work, and they have an incentive to improve their life and not return to incarceration.
Later on, would you supply us with a little more data on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for your consideration.
Don't set a timer because we're already over.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank
May
you for
begin.
having us. Good morning. My name is Della Smith. I'm here, the Executive Director for the Mississippi State Board of Funeral Services. I'm here this morning with Denise Duracet with Cornerstone and our Board Vice Chair, Ms. Sandra Chancellor. I'm just going to present some information to you all to let you know what we've been doing and to discuss our request for the fiscal year 27. We license and, yes, sir. pull it closer. We license and regulate, okay, funeral establishments and funeral licensees. We currently have 482 active establishments, 1,660 licensees, including funeral director, funeral service, and crematory operators. We issued 17 new establishment licenses in the last fiscal year and 107 new licensees. We also have an apprenticeship program that we maintain and regulate over a 12-month period, and it's one of the requirements that they have to meet for licensure. Also for fiscal year 25, we received 49 complaints and we resolved or closed 57. We completed 193 inspections and we collected $2,800 in fines. Also, just to give you all some information that I know I've noticed has been requested, we maintain a $230,360 cash balance for the last fiscal year. Our current budget request, as approved by ELBO, will include, we are requesting the additional amounts for inspector contracts, building and equipment leases, legal and fiscal services, additional DFA charges, salvage water removal, postage and other credit charges, and IT operational costs. The amount over the ELBO recommended amount we are requesting authority for is $47,171. That will include a one-time amount of $23,490, which is for the update of our current license management system. I'm sure as you've heard from other professions that those systems allow us to house all of our licensee information in one specific location. Ours also allow us to not have to maintain files because everything is computer imaged. It also allows us to provide website services, including online applications, renewals, and complaints. We do rent and lease a location, and it is does have an escalation, so that amount is necessary for the upcoming fiscal year. And that concludes the information.
One question,
Yes, sir.
you all stayed in the news a lot not you all, but
Yes, sir.
funeral homes.
Yes, sir.
And do you, in terms of the investigations that were they done? Some of them seem like they were a little untimely. I don't know if that's correct word, but I'm thinking about one, I guess, in particular in up in North Mississippi.
Mhm.
Crematory, I believe it was.
Now, well, I only see the news for this area, so, but I don't know if you're speaking about the situation where the bodies were found in the storage facility. Okay, so in that particular case, that individual was unlicensed. And up until last year, at the beginning of fiscal year 26, we did not have unlicensed activity in our statute. So we could actually only pursue a licensee that was assisting them. So at the time that he was finally caught with what he was doing, we did appropriately pursue the individuals that was helping him, and we took the necessary disciplinary action regarding them.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
No, thank you for coming. No other questions?
We thank you for our time, and I wanted to specifically thank Senator Tyler McCon for his support in our past bills. Thank you all and have a good day.
May I proceed?
Yes.
All right,
please
thank
do.
My name is Jeff Jernigan. Thank you, Chairman, or Sir, or Senator. My name is Jeff Jernigan. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Motor Vehicle Commission.
Put the mic a little closer.
A little closer. Is that better? Thank you. Again, thank you for the opportunity to present our agency's budget request here today. We are seeking, we're fine with the LBO's budget proposal. I believe it's about $1,000, $1,500 difference from what we requested. We maintain a diligent approach to our fiscal responsibility and operational efficiency at the agency. We're pleased to report that we consistently manage our expenditures carefully and return any unspent funds to the state treasury. Our financial position remains stable. As of today, our trust account holds about $1.9 million in it. Our revenues this year are slightly below where we were last year, but we're at $410,000 so far that we've received in the past 6 months. The treasury amount is going to deplete over the next few months as we receive most of our license renewals in December. We'll have some funds that come in towards the end of the year in June. Our spending is slightly ahead of where we were in the previous year, but that's expected. We're within our budget as expected. We were planning on having a multi-day hearing between a dispute between a manufacturer and a distributor, a dealer this year. However, that did settle, and so we're not going to be spending those funds in that manner this year. We have planned to update our database. Our current database people reached out to us and said, hey, there's several state agencies that, have an old database system that doesn't have the security features of today. And they were, gave us a quote for about $35,000 to update that system. We need to get a second bid on that. We're going to be reaching out, but I think we'll be able to put those funds, those expenses over 2 fiscal years, and we'll be able to allocate the money that way and still maintain within our budget. So we're not asking for any additional money for those reasons, but we're looking at doing that going forward. Generally, our minor expenses and stuff do tick up every year or so, but we should be within our parameters there. And, we do appreciate the flexibility to have a little bit extra money in our budget so that we can have hearings when they pop up and they're mandatory and we have to get a court reporter. And, if it's large enough, we'll, figure out where we need to have those type hearings. So that's why we do sometimes have unspent funds, is that we plan to have a hearing that may or may not pop up. But when I previously served the AG's office as a attorney to the boards, I've been in situations where the board is like, hey, we'd have a hearing, but we got to wait till July because we don't have any funds for the rest of the year to pay those out. And I'd love to avoid those issues when they do pop up. And so we appreciate your continued support of our mission. If you have any questions, about my agency or anything, Your Honor, or Chairman, I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Any questions?
I just got a general question. I've gone through what you filed on LBO's website. And one of the things that I don't think was realized exactly what y'all totally do, the fact that you actually regulate advertisements. I'd like to know, do you receive a lot of complaints on new vehicle advertisement? Because I don't really think that we could have a television station without somebody advertising a car before it was over with, but I just see that it does get regulated there. Is that?
Yeah, we do look at those a lot of times. If it comes across we have 3 employees. If it comes across us and we see it, whether it's on Facebook or some other source, obviously we pause and look at it. And I see a TV ad pop up, even if I'm out of state, I pay attention to it and look for those, what's included, what's not included. A lot of times it's going to be a dealer reporting another dealer. A lot of those pricing issues are on the website side. We have a long regulation for rule, on advertising, and it covers probably like 30 different categories of different restrictions. And whether that's the use of certain words where you can't say, invoice is a key word. And that's kind of been standard. You can't use the word, there's certain words you can or can't use, below invoice or something like that, or employee pricing. If the manufacturer is not doing employee pricing, you can't advertise employee pricing. And then there's a lot of those mailers that you get for like a staff sales event that's going on, those have to come to our office. We review them and we get it back to them and tell them where they need to make edits at it. Part of that, we've worked with the Attorney General's office in making sure they're, not deceptive. And whereas a simple thing to say is that here's your prize board. If your cards, if it's blackjack and you pull up 21 or something like that, it shouldn't immediately go over to $50,000. It's, those should be staggered to where, hey, oh, look, I won $50,000 with my money, because that's, deceptive to the consumer going out. And so those are things that we do review on advertising a lot. Some of it we've looked at, just if things popped up. There was one time a Nissan dealer on the coast, which was part of a large group. And of course, they're like showing 250 Nissan Altimas. Well, some of those are in New Jersey. And it's like, look, you don't have the location. Customer shows up and you have 10 cars for that. Where are these other cars? And so we kind of looked back, looked at the rules, made reasonable regulations about indicating where those vehicles are, location of those cars. So.
That's very good to know. Question I do have for you, where are y'all located? Are y'all in a state office building?
No, we lease a building, we lease a space in a building off of Leela Drive around Ridgewood and Lakeland, behind the McDonald's over there. The agency's been there, I think, since like late 80s, early 90s. So we've been there a long, long time.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, what you say, you had 1.8 in cash reserves or 1 point something?
Yes, it's around that number. It's, goes up a little bit more in December than it.
Do you expend that money or do you?
No,
return
and
it?
we only are authorized to spend about 370 or $370,000. And so the rest of it goes to the state treasury.
Of the excess goes to the Treasury Department. So you do, that money does get returned back to the general fund, or?
We have our own account. It goes into the treasury account. It's not go to the general fund. Our fines go to the general fund, but our license funds go into the treasury account.
And that money is generated off of fees and other things that you charge. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Barr. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, cause he missed, the house side too, so he was sick. Oh. Yeah. Why you have a good team? Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you all for coming, and we will, you're on the clock.
All right.
And put a mic, if you're gonna speak, put a mic up close for you, so pick up.
Morning, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Right. I appreciate the time to talk with you guys this morning. My name is Rashonda Kelly, and I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Banking and Consumer Finance. With me at the table, I have Sam Hubbard, our Deputy Commissioner, and Jennifer Head, our Director of Finance and Administration. This morning, I will share some demographics for the agency and some operational highlights. I'll give a brief overview of our budget request and why we need what we're asking for. And Jennifer will discuss more details of our budget request. So our agency licenses nearly 9,300 non-bank financial service providers, and that represents approximately 7,000 mortgage companies, branches, and individuals in consumer finance industries, total about 10 of those industry types, and there are about 2,100 of those licensees. There are 52 state chartered banks. We have no state chartered credit unions. Many of our supervisory priorities are related to hiring and training examiners, industry and regulatory engagement, and enhancing operations through people and systems. That's for bank and non-bank. I want to provide a human capital update. That's been one of our bigger challenges over the past 5 years. However, turnover has stabilized over the past 12 months. We have committed to streamlining our talent acquisition process by tracking vacancies, interviews, hires, offers, with accountability of the division directors shared with the human resources manager. We've also increased the transparency of utilization of our vacancies for stakeholders, both internal and external. Last year, when I spoke to you, we had 94% utilization rate. Today, that remains the case. While we've experienced turnover, it is relatively stable. We have 86 positions. 80 of those positions are filled. We're currently interviewing to fill 4 bank examiner positions and 2 non-bank examiner positions. And I'll talk briefly about the budget before I hand it over to Jennifer to get really in the details. Our fiscal year 2027 budget request is $13 million, a little bit above $13 million. And it represents about a $500,000 increase over our current fiscal year budget operations. We're asking for additional authority in the contractual services category not received in fiscal year 26 appropriation, and that is about $300,000. The appropriation will build the technology framework for training for year 1 expenses of the new MSB, Money Service Business section within our non-bank division. We're also requesting $200,000 in additional authority in the salaries category to continue staffing the new MSB division. 2 points of note: we're not requesting new positions in fiscal year 2027 budget request. And while we maintained a relatively flat ask in our travel request, expense management continues to be a challenge. Meal allowances and mile reimbursement amounts are determined by DFA, as you know, and those amounts have increased 20% since 2020. We received notification about 2 weeks ago that the mileage rate was going up again to 73 cents a mile. So why do we need this request? Human capital remains our largest expenditure for the category, representing approximately 70% of our budget request. The department is the prudential sole regulator for our non-bank financial service providers. And again, that's about 9,400 service providers. And we work jointly with the federal agencies in supervising state chartered banks. As federal agencies have downsized and scaled back in the supervisory scope, we have not. So our agency is standing in the gap to ensure consistent and effective oversight of all of our state chartered institutions. With that, I'll yield the floor to Jennifer Head.
Good morning. Thank you again. As Commissioner Kelly said, thank you for your time. And I just wanted to say thank you for your help last year. She mentioned the civil money penalty fund. I will be speaking to that on that center section of your handout. Appreciate your help last year with getting that fund established. We had a new revenue stream with those funds. So we wanted to present the framework and the money services division for that framework and build that out. So that is the bulk of our request. We are asking for $200,000 in salaries and $300,000 in contractual. While we did receive some of the authority last year, the bottom line was not increased. So we essentially had to use one of our already established funds for that. So 2027, we will begin seeing more expenses and building that out. The contractual services category, that will be related to training and related expenses that go with training, but also for those behind the scenes IT framework that is needed to make that a more robust division. And we are working with our internal information technology team with IT needs and also the cybersecurity needs with that non-bank division. All other expenses remain the same. We are working within our budget and the approval for the appropriations bill. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Ms. Hobbs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Kelly, thanks for your, and Ms. Head too, thanks for your presentation. In your non-banking division, you regulate pawnbrokers too. I know one of my colleagues has mentioned to me there were some issues with pawnbrokers. Can you address what's going on in that department, in that area?
Yes, so our non-bank division is licensed through NMLS every year. From November 1st is the onset of the new renewal period. It goes through the year end of that year. Pawn had some issues with renewing their licenses for the coming 2026 year. We started, in statute, it allows the commissioner to use NMLS to license non-bank industries. Prior to this passage, and this was passed under former Commissioner John Allison, prior to this passage of the NMLS authority, all of our licenses were renewed by hand. We had a bigger staff on that side, and our agency was essentially processing all the paperwork for renewals. NMLS has a platform system that every state has the ability to use to help increase efficiencies and better use of resources within their agencies by using this portal for renewals. We started transitioning all of our industries to NMLS, I believe starting in 15 under a previous commissioner. And what we did is we phased transition to NMLS by the size, sophistication, and use of technology in those industry types. So mortgage was first. We did money service businesses. We eventually moved to small loans, and pawn industry was scheduled for last in 2019 to transition. They had complications in 2019. We talked with the industry, talked with the chairman at that time. We gave them an extra year to transition. 2020 happened, as did COVID. They had some issues. We all had issues in 2020. We gave them an additional year to transition. So there's 2 extra years to transition. In 2021,
Can I interrupt you real quick? Is it just the pawn industry that you gave extras, or is it the other non-banking?
It was just the pawn industry that got extra time to transition.
The other non-banking departments or non-banking division components they had already transitioned to
Yes,
different
sir.
systems?
Yes, sir. They had all
Okay.
transitioned prior to 2019.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries, no worries. And so in 2021, they finally transitioned, and we pushed out training in 2020 to try to help them understand the dashboards and the process. And during that training, only 35 licensees actually attended the training out of, I think at the time we had close to 200 pawn industry licensees. 35 attended. 2 pawn licensees remained on the call at the end of the training. So we have been back and forth every December with the pawn industry since they transitioned in 2021. Their concern was that it's a complicated system. It's hard to understand. I've got to devote time to do it. I can't take time out of my workday to get my license. Our team in the office is available. There is a call center. There was a concern expressed by one of our senators regarding this industry type. There were several meetings that were held. Concerns were expressed. Concerns were noted. There was an action item list that our agency received in what to do to try to help address this. One of the issues, a request that was made, was to make sure that all the pawn industry had a printed copy of their license. That was done. The request was made on January 12th. All pawn industry licensees were issued a license January 14th. At that time, 118 licenses were issued. Another concern was the usability of the system. Again, I'll go back to 2020 when we had training and very few attended. What we've committed to do is to provide 2 training courses, one in March and one in September, in advance of the renewals process or timeline for 2027, which starts November 1st of 2026. There was also a request to do a stress test of how long would it take our agency to try to get a license so that we can see the concerns. We had 3 individuals designated in our office to conduct a stress test. And we had a follow-up with those guys, I think it was yesterday. What were the findings of this stress test? And we had tester 1 was able to complete the application process in an hour and a half. Tester 2 was able to complete the process in 2.5 hours. And tester 3, he has some family issues, so he's out right now, so I don't have his timeline for completion. There were some issues noted. Now, I will go back and say that one of the concerns with the industry, the pawn industry, was that it took months to get their licenses renewed, no callbacks, no communication, little guidance, misinformation from the call center when they were trying to get their licenses renewed. So we took the concerns that they had. We ran the test in our office. We have our findings. A meeting was requested with NMLS, who is the owner of the system. We have a meeting scheduled for today at 12:30 to talk about all the questions that came out of senators' concerns, as well as industry concerns, as well as some of the things that we noted when we conducted our stress test. Non-applicable data sets that may be required for one industry type, it shows up in the poem. It does not pause, it does not stop the application process. They can still proceed. We do have some questions on, well, how do they submit? So we are trying to challenge the process to figure out what's going on, how does this happen? How do they get licensed if they have all these problems within the system? So right now, we're going through all those questions, and we will follow up with Senator late next week when we have all the findings in play.
Okay, yeah, if you would, please follow up with us just to let us know what's going on with that. And also, why is this an issue just for the pawn? If it is an issue, why is this an issue for pawn and not for the other non-banking division?
I have been asking that question for 5 years.
Is it the same format? Do they use the same?
It's the same format. There are actually fewer requirements for the pawn industry as far as what has to be provided in renewal versus like mortgage industry.
You say fewer
Fewer.
requirements?
I think there are like 3 requirements. I think there's a conversion. They had to convert from a paper surety bond to an electronic surety bond this year. But all the other industries have already done that. So we phase again that transition from a paper surety bond to an electronic surety bond, and that's worked through with their bonding company connecting with NMLS. So that was the only issue.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the only difference this year in renewal.
So their requirements in the pawn industry are less than what the other non-banking divisions?
Yes, sir. They have to submit their.
Is it just a handful of pawnbrokers that are having this?
Well, when we received the complaints or concerns from the industry, we got 18 complaints or concerns expressed from the industry. Again, there's 147 licensees in the pawn industry. We got 18. We've dissected all of those concerns and we're looking into that. But I cannot say if it's, and there are some some pawnbrokers within this industry type that were able to renew multiple licensees in the renewal period without incident. And so I hear that there are a lot of concerns, but it appears that several pawn license holders are able to go into NMLS and renew without incident.
And it looks like you got a lot more check cashers and credit availability institutions. You're not having
No, sir.
any problems.
Our small loan, I think it's almost 500 licensees.
Right.
0 licensees had any concerns and were issued any kind of C&D at the end of the renewal period. They were all able to get on without incident.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what it is in the pawn industry that's causing the difficulties, but just keep us posted on that. If you
Absolutely. We will continue to work with Senator and the pawn industry on trying to remedy those concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is your realm, but dealing with small loans, automotive loans, the quick, cash, collateral that you put up, kind of like, a title for a fast loan of a vehicle. The asset is actually the vehicle. Some of those in your institution where I don't think they know actually how some of the, individual entities are carrying a lot of a asset that is not really viable. Let me give you an example. Person owns a car, has a wreck. The car's basically demolished, but the title and the age of the car is still a very valuable asset. They go down and get a quick loan. And in actuality, they'll never recover. The vehicle is basically worth scrap. So to keep it from being known to the investors and all, they just keep it on the books. Do y'all basically audit any of these small loan companies to see if they're financially not really viable?
So I can't speak to the full scope of the examination that's done, because it sounds like you're talking about title pledge companies. We do regulate those companies. I can do some, I can ask our director of non-bank who has that under his jurisdiction to look into that. I would assume that an inspection of the vehicle would be performed at the onset of the contract for that, for that title. That's my assumption. But I commit to following up with our non-bank director to see the scope of the exam. I did do a ride along with a title pledge company, and it was a lot of checklist involved in looking at what's required, what's in the file, what disclosures were given, did the customer know what they were engaging in. But as far as the financial solvency of the company or the licensee, I'm not sure how in depth we look at that, but I will follow up and get back with you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other questions? Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time and
I appreciate your time. All right, thanks.
To make sure that you did. Yeah.